welcome. In a country where people equate mental illness with madness, seeking medical help for psychological issues is still largely taboo. No wonder WHO has declared India to be the most depressed country in the world, with 36% of Indians admitting to battling depression. And this is no joke. In March this year, we saw the Parliament passing an ambitious mental health care bill, which many are hailing as a step closer to a more progressive India. But only 10% of those affected are able to access proper mental health facilities, and that's not all. The leading cause of death among young people in India today is suicide. Now, considering our young demographics, this is an alarm bell. And even as the world marks World Mental Health Day on the 10th of October, India seems to have escaped the stark reality it faces when it comes to mental health. So let's talk about this issue. We have Dr. Shyam Bhatt, one of the country's leading psychiatrists. We have Jaina Kothari, a disability rights lawyer and director of the Center for Law and Policy Research. We have Amala Kapoor Shankardas, health sociologist who works primarily on issues faced by the elderly. Chaitali Sinha, psychologist with the Hake Child Rights NGO. Sanchana Krishna, suicide survivor, founder of Living Stories, and Reshma Veliappan, mental health activists, all of them in studio. Dr. Bhatt, I want to start with you. What's going on? Because the numbers are so alarming. And we're saying it affects people across the board, backgrounds, rich, poor, genders. Yet people who need help don't seek it and don't get it.
That's right. We can't understate the issue. And I don't want to sound alarmist, but it is a serious issue. It might be the biggest health crisis this country has ever faced. Because as you rightly said, it's affecting young people. More than 150 million people are already affected by the most stringent definitions of depression, and that's going to increase. Research shows that about 40% of our country carries the gene that makes us vulnerable to depression. And one of the things that's most stressful for any society is rapid social change, fragmentation, isolation, loneliness, and it's all happening in our country.
But it is about genetics, and we're more
No, it's an interaction between environment and genetics.
Okay.
So if you have a vulnerable population genetically, and you create an environment like the kind of, the world we live in now, then those who are genetically vulnerable could actually get clinical depression and anxiety. In fact, studies show that corporate India, about 40% of people already suffer from depression. Now, why don't they seek help? Well, frankly, there's still a lot of stigma, lack of awareness, a lot of shame about this, misinformation. People don't even know that this is a medical issue that they can get help for. And I think the even scarier thing, though, is that even if people sought help, we don't have the professionals today in this country. We have 3,500 psychiatrists only for a country of 1.2 billion people, 8,000 psychologists.
That is an alarming statistic.
It is a real alarming thing. I've come to the conclusion that as much as we need to focus on treatment, we also need to look at prevention, and we have to, because this is a preventable condition.
Okay, well, we have someone here who did seek help. Karuna Chima, you used to do self-harm, which is actually a way of signaling that you want help, or you need someone to look into you, but your family didn't notice that?
I could not share it with my family at first. I used to come up with a lot of anger inside me. I started when I used to sleep. I used to foresee some nightmares where I am actually hurting people back who've been hurting me emotionally or physically. And that it scared me. It scared me because those were the people I've been loved, and they've been loving me once in their lifetime.
You chose to go to a psychiatrist.
I did choose. I did not inform my family because I've been always a silent child. For me, coming out with my emotions has always been difficulty. So I was very silently staying at home, and I lost my mother when I was 17. And she was my best friend, and it pushed me to a level that I took a corner. I never knew I will take a corner in my life, though I was fun-loving. I was doing routines.
So that was the stress that could have been that triggered it off?
I believe, because I used to feel lonely. I used to feel anger because I could not save her.
But if it was something so obvious, why could you not talk to your family about it?
Sometimes in our Indian family, what we believe is that a child has to be a little more wiser and be responsible, right? So
even after losing your mom at 17, we expect kids to say,
you're going to stay stronger. Not that somebody told me to stay strong, but that was quite obvious. You have a siblings. You've been crying, and then that can lead somebody else to cry. And I thought it was wiser enough to sit silently in the corner and do not let the anger and aggression and that pain come out. I did seek help from friends. I used to spend time with them. Wasn't enough.
So you needed professional help. not just a friend that you could talk to or
Yes.
shoulder you could cry on.
Yeah, because I had trust issue. I was not able to trust anybody. I went to a doctor and it was really strange for me. Like I had sleeping issues. They were like coming like from years, but I did not pay attention to. But then when I used to sleep very less because I was so scared of those nightmares, because I was seeing people like either I'm dying or either they're dying or either I'm killing them or either they're killing me, they're hitting me, and I used to feel that I'm in a cubicle and the cubicle is getting smaller, smaller, smaller. So those strange fear and anger had to be awakened by the professional help.
So you was one of the very few in our country who were actually able to find the right
Yes.
professional help. And was it medication? Was it just therapy? What was the solution?
It was difficult for me to actually stand up for myself and like go to psychiatrist, because in India it is called like madness, you are like not to be mad, you're going to
Pagal hai,
psychiatric.
like, as they
Pagal
say.
hai yaar. Who says, even my friends like, are you mad? I say I dream about killing people, and like, you need a psychiatrist, you're gone mad. It was not about that I'm killing them, but they were like, no, that is a madness, you cannot kill people. Of course I know I cannot kill people, but I wanted to know the reason why it was coming to me. So I took a professional help, and it
And how much did this cost?
Well, honestly, I was studying that time, and I joined into some job, but it was not enough for going therapy every day,
Because you hadn't told your family, so where was the money coming from?
Yes, of course. So I need to, of course my family supported me for that later on.
Okay.
But then again, it was not, of course family says, it's not an age of going to a psychiatrist at 17, and you cannot answer everybody in your house. So I did went, but it was quite an expensive affair.
So it is expensive, and
Very
that perhaps
expensive.
also because there's a demand and supply problem. Jenna, the new healthcare policy, the bill, it says that by 2020 we're going to provide medical healthcare for everybody. Is that a promise we can actually fulfill?
I think that's going to be extremely hard. The Mental Health Care Act actually provides quite radically that every person shall have the right to affordable, accessible, quality mental health care.
Which is something we should all applaud.
Which
That's a huge
is
step, at least.
very, very progressive. Now there are huge challenges for this. We don't have professionals. The government has to build curriculums, build the capacity of professionals. And if you're going to now start training and providing courses, it's going to be decades before you're going to get a huge number of professionals. Till then, does the government have resources to subsidize mental health care from private professionals? Do we have enough private professionals as well? So, I find that there are going to be a lot of challenges, but we have a right, we have a justiciable right. So if people don't get affordable, accessible, quality health care, we can actually say that, well, the government has to provide it to us.
Okay, we don't have private professionals stepping into this. Sanchana Krishnan actually is one person who's trying to help out. You yourself needed help at one point of time. You tried to kill yourself.
Yes, I did. It was a very difficult time, and it wasn't once that I tried to do it. It was not a call for attention. It was not a cry for help. It was an act of desperation. It was not polite. It was not pretty, and it was not something I'm proud to have done. And it came from a place of deep disappointment with my own life, and the fact that there was no accessible, affordable help. There was no seeming solution to a problem as deep as bipolar disorder, combined with a touch of OCD, combined with a touch of borderline. I felt like a masala that couldn't be eaten by anyone. It's like when you try to go to a therapist, and if the first therapist that you go to leaves to the UK for better prospects within within 2 months, and the next therapist you go to starts telling you about her life problems, and the next therapist you go to tells you that you need to be on medication for the rest of your life, you lose faith in the institution of therapy. It's not easy to afford therapy in this country. If you go to a place that seems affordable, the therapists are crap. I'm sorry, but they are. If you go to a place that's really great, you have to bleed out of your wallet. I am not someone who makes any great lakhs per annum, and to rely on your family for mental health care is a pain when your family is abroad and you don't know how to explain to them that you don't just need psychiatrist, but you also need a psychologist, and the two are not the same, and the two are necessary at the same time. So it's quite a battle for anyone. And If it's going to cost you 4,000 rupees a week to take care of your mental health, what are you going to do for anything else? So it's not just affordable mental health care that's a problem. It's good doctors that's a problem. It's the affordability, it's the accessibility, it's discovery, because we have platforms like Practo that do talk to us about, that do give you suggestions on therapists, but the reviews are very few. The reviews are by very few individuals who don't give you an in-depth understanding of what you can expect from that doctor. A doctor a therapist who talks about marriage problems, who talks about counseling, who talks about, couples therapy, cannot really help you if you have an illness as severe as bipolar, as OCD. Mental health is a huge field. It's seen as one little field called psychology, but it's a very vast discipline that involves a lot of different illnesses, ranging from the minor anxiety attacks, which is not minor, but ranging from the temporary anxiety attacks that one can face at one point in their life, to something as severe as an OCD that an individual has to battle for the rest of their life and who needs consistent medical care. Everything is equally important, but you can't go to the same person for everything, and you don't know who to go to. So there's a problem at every step of the way from an individual reaching a medical professional.
So you are one person who's not just willing to talk about this openly, you also then decided that you faced all these problems, you need to help other people. That's what you do, the
Most
organization
definitely.
that you've set up.
Yes.
But basically you're providing a ear. The people who work with you, who listen to people who may not have anyone to reach out to, are they professionally trained? Are they
So
just regular
what's happening, Living Stories is currently, what's happening with Living Stories is that it's a program where we're using a model where there are individuals with various mental health issues who come on board as books. These books have a story to tell you about their mental health journey, and there are readers who come on board to listen to these stories. The readers could be people who have mental health issues themselves. They could be caregivers of people. We ignore the caregivers. We ignore the mental health of the caregivers. They go through a lot. My mother had to go through a lot to see me cut myself up and begging her to please let me die. I did never want to put my mom through that. And she did not have psychological support. She should have. So many caregivers should. So readers come on board. Readers come to listen to the stories of these books to maybe get a little more knowledge, to get a little more empathy. The books are people with mental health issues, but they're also people who are professionals. We have, some of our books are either school counselors or they're psychiatrists or they're psychologists. So I try to curate a wide range of individuals who have battled everything from anxiety and depression to self-harm to sexual abuse to OCD to bipolar to, you have like 25 books at your disposal on one day, and you can speak to as many of them as you wish to gain an understanding. And if you're someone who needs help, we help you to at least prompt you, to encourage you to go seek that help you need. And the books later form support groups. It's not just a one-time thing where people come, talk about their problems and vanish. No, the books who come on board, they form support groups. It doesn't aim to be just a space where we talk about our problems in a beautiful setting and walk away. It is a space that aims to really, really help as much as possible. And this is just one program. Living Stories wants to do much more.
Well, in this space, in this heady cocktail of stigma and ignorance, now let's throw into the fact that we're living in an internet age. Chaitali, we're living in this age that we say this generation has the most access to means of communication. They have a social network. They have so much more going for them than what we had growing up. Yet, there's no one to talk to or no one's listening.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's odd, right? It's paradoxical that we are the most connected people ever, but we're also absolutely disconnected, feel isolated, feel alone. In the same houses, when we live with flatmates, when we come to new cities, everyone feels alone in different ways, and that pandemic never seems to quite end. With loneliness, with things such as these, it's the stigma because of which people can't go out and talk to people they know. So they need a cloak of anonymity in order to even begin talking about some of these things. So actually some of the forums where, things like Omegle, etc., where people are doing anonymous chatting. So that has two sides to it. One is that it may be open to bullying, you may be getting wrong advice, and the other side of it is that some people actually do receive help and some people are getting to just talk to people without having to share any personal information, and that's actually good.
But can I play devil's advocate, right?
Yeah.
We have a generation, of course I'm talking about urban, upper middle class educated kids who just have everything today, right? Their parents want to give them over and above. They have a sense of entitlement, they're instant gratification, and life is about failures, life is about up and downs, life is about, not getting the right marks perhaps, but eventually when they grow up and go out into the real world, they're not able to deal with that pressure.
I think the core problem that I see there is more
a bequeathed sense of identity, which I think is very, very central to how Indian culture functions. Adolescents are often told who they have to be, the kind of expectations that they have to live up to, who they have to be as people, and that's set by the family, by the parents, by the grandparents. And they don't actually have enough time to go out and explore who they actually want to be as people, as individuals themselves. And I think that leads to a certain amount of dissonance, which I think is one of the things that Dr. Bhatt was talking about, that, you know, when you talk about the environment, when you talk about why disorders are happening, it's not just because of, some genetic conditions or some stressors that exist in the environment, but because of a culture that has existed over a period of time and continues to exist across families and across cities.
Dr. Bhatt, let me ask you this question, because you, for example, I mean, this is well known. You had a girlfriend, you followed her to the UK, she then dumped you. But then you made a book out of it, and this is what led you also into this profession to help other people. So will you answer that question? What happens? That's what happens in life. You have breakups, you have heartbreak.
Sure. No, let me address what you said. In the 1970s in the United States, there was a concerted attempt to increase the self-esteem of young kids, because psychologists pointed out that people who are depressed have a low self-esteem. And they thought then if we boost the self-esteem of our children, then they'll grow up to be happy, well-adjusted adults. But we're seeing 20 years after that experiment that, as you said, all the people who went through self-esteem training were told that you're beautiful, you're great, you can get whatever you want in life. And when they left school and college and they went out into the real world and they weren't being praised at their work, when they didn't get what they wanted, the sense of entitlement, which is, and they became fragile, they couldn't handle that, and they suddenly felt extremely depressed. I think to Chaitali's point, yes, we have had a culture which in a sense has been protective all these years. But what you're seeing now since the rise of the internet is a homogenization of culture across the globe. I don't think it matters now whether you're an adolescent in New Delhi or in New York. If you're from a middle class, upper middle class family, you're getting your culture not from your parents, not from your friends. I mean, from your friends, yes, but also from YouTube, from the internet. And it's the same material people are consuming around the world. And so what's happening is you're going to see a homogenization of culture, you're going to see increasing entitlement, increasing sensitivity. And we should also perhaps talk about, frankly, how the internet itself shapes the brain. The internet itself decreases the ability to delay gratification. When I'm on the internet, I get what I want and I get it now. The internet is a place of novelty. It doesn't allow me to be patient. It doesn't allow me a chance to be empathic to the other or to sit with my own feelings and to know how to take care of my feelings. So I think there is an onslaught of all of these huge global forces, and that is why we are such a vulnerable country. Because for the first time, we are facing this, and we are still at the stage where we're still talking about shame, about stigma. So we have a long way to go.
So is the internet the instigator of all these problems, or is that also part of the solution? Let's get in some audience over here. Anyone wants to respond? Any millennials here? Because we are this generation who you can get fame and you can get likes and be popular by not having done anything, by just taking a selfie or just not having invented anything, created anything.
One of my friends has gone through depression. She was the one who was taking solutions through internet, like putting pictures as a defense mechanism when people praise that person. So it's a defense mechanism that person was using.
This is a very good point. What's happening more and more is that, as human beings, our greatest strength was we live in the world of ideas. But now we have a virtual identity online, and many people are starting to, be more invested in the virtual identity than the real self. And I think that's a problem.
Well, what can we do as individuals? We actually have someone here you're a volunteer, right? You work at an organization that tries to help out people with mental issues. Why have you chosen to do this?
See, I tell you about Symmetry is a crisis intervention center. People who are distressed, depressed or contemplating suicide, they give us a call and share their feeling. We mentioned we are a crisis intervention center. People, when they are in crisis, they wanted to share their feeling with somebody. They wanted to share with somebody who is anonymous, maybe.
No, but you're a volunteer.
Yes.
You've chosen to do this.
Yes.
Why?
I choose to do it because I wanted to do this kind of job. So I'm here.
And do you have any professional training?
Yes, all volunteers in Symmetry are professionally trained because we had our own system of training. So they are sensitized to handle these kind of calls.
And why do private organizations need to do this? We've talked about this over here. Jaina said that the government Like we don't have a suicide helpline, for example, like we do in the US. Do we?
We have
one?
volunteer. We have some hotlines in the country
have
run by
But they're all
different
volunteers.
No, but
they're all
There's no
privately
government
set up.
hotline. There are
Excuse me.
NGOs
So,
that run.
for
hotlines.
example,
We are also a suicide helpline.